that just under 44% had achieved a matric or a grade 12, and about 18% indicated to be holding a degree or some form of a postgraduate qualification. And about 17%, which is less than a fifth, indicated that they had some post-school or TVET qualification. So that is just to give you a sense of the highest education level of the people that participated in the study. Okay, we then followed on to understand why limited education, why, because we had a category. Let me just go back. Okay, it's not showing here. But we had a category that showed that some people did not have any formal education. So we thought, that would be like a very insightful follow-up to ask why do you have a limited formal education, or why could you not achieve a matric? What were the issues? What were the barriers? And you'll see that one of the key reasons that kept coming up was that people failed the grade and they just got discouraged and they dropped out of the system and they left the schooling system. And the second most cited reason was family responsibilities. I guess that also speak to some of the challenges that continue. That a girl child continue to experience. Okay, but overall, all these speak to the importance of second chance opportunities which should be availed in order to support the children to improve on their education level and training. Okay, so in this slide, we're looking at the respondents' distribution by exposure to the type of intervention. As you remember during our introductory session, we indicated that we classified a number of programs and we put them under these few baskets, whether they participated in some work seeker support program or any skill development program, or they were in some internship or leadership programs and so forth. So notably in this slide, okay, so I also just want to remind you that respondents had often participated in more than one intervention. So towards beginning to evaluate the effectiveness of the different programs, we then asked the respondents to identify the most significant intervention which had contributed to their labor market status, and the most common intervention that the respondents were exposed to, as you can see on the screen, is the bursary, or those who awarded scholarships. And the next most common was the people participating in internship and learnerships, and that was followed by the NYSP, the NYRES, and the PI interventions that had given about 12% of our respondents the opportunity. Okay, so now we're moving on to the awareness about this myriad of policy interventions. And we argue that the awareness of the development interventions is quite important because it speaks to the program's accessibility, promoting transparency in who is targeted and who benefits from such programs. Because what is the point if we've got good programs but people are not aware? It means there's something off in terms of our targeting. So we're asking about awareness, we're asking about the source of awareness. How do you know about it, and how did you find out about it? Okay, so in this slide, we begin by comparing the awareness of awareness about the different programs or interventions and the extent of participation. And if you look closely, you'll see that it seems as if the high rates of awareness does not really necessarily translate into higher participation rate. Not that we're expecting like the correlation between the two, but we just thought that's an interesting observation. Further to that, you'll see that the highest participation rate is found, so there are many people that are registered to have received some bursaries or scholarships, and that was followed by 25% of those who had participated in internships and learnership programs. But again, it's possible that people could have participated in a number of programs. But what is coming out clear is that people are aware, so awareness remains far greater than participation. I think that's a takeaway point in that slide. Okay, then we move on to look at the issues of accessibility. So it looks at the extent to which the beneficiaries had access to the information about the different interventions. Overall, there were very high levels of access to information, with over 75% of participants noting positive responses to having access to information about the different progress. And our further analysis actually shows that these perceptions were higher across the different interventions, except when it came to work seeker support, which scored less than 64. So more needs to be done, which was work seeker support as well as the business management. So more needs to be done in that area. But overall, positive access responses were noted when participants stated that they had access to information to some extent or to great extent. Okay, so here we are looking at the source of information. Where did you learn about a particular intervention? And understanding the sources of information which respondents drew on shows that for specific interventions, the respondents relied on different sources, as can be seen in the picture. We almost have learned about bursaries from their education institution, but it makes sense because already if you're at the university, you've already beginning to develop your own networks, and the lecturers could be a useful source in terms of guidance of where to apply or where are the opportunities. You'll also see that with regard to, for instance, EPWP or CWP, almost half of the respondents, 46%, reported that family and friends were crucial for accessing such information. And social media was credited with providing information about the National Youth Service as well as the work seeker support. So in all, the main sources of information were thus the education institutions for those who are already at the universities or institutions of higher learning, friends and family, social media platforms, as well as the internet. But of course, when it comes to friends and family, it also depends on where they are. Are they able to, what information are they able to pass over to their siblings? So that's always, so the issue of quality of can come to play. Okay, so respondents' awareness of interventions by education level, we thought that will also be interesting. Again, we are seeing high percentages demonstrating overwhelming awareness about the programs. The only slight concern relates to lower numbers amongst those with low levels of education. Again, it brings our attention to the issue of targeting. as they seem to be the least aware of the existence of the bucket of training and employment intervention. So that's one area that we can also pick up on. So the previous section looked at the awareness of the programs, accessibility, and the main sources of information. So now I want us to turn attention to look at to explore some of the understanding that participants had about these different programs. Okay, so we asked the participants when they participated in, you know, the particular intervention. And you'll see that solid bar between 2015 and 2020, that the majority of the respondents participated in interventions post 2015, with substantially fewer. In fact, it's about 1,500 or 1,300 that participated between that period of 5 years between 2015 and 2020, with quite fewer participating in the intervention between 2010 and 2014. Between 2010 and 2014. So yeah, so most of our respondents came from that cohort. Okay, so as indicated, the participant could have participated in different interventions, but then we asked them to indicate which one they thought had more effect on where they are in the labor market. Which one do they perceive, you know, as the most significant? So you'll see that on the notes we are indicating that the strongest performing most significant intervention, which was reported by almost 70%, was the internship or the learnerships, which is followed by EPW and CWP at 58%. So many of the participants felt that the internship and the training that they received through the internship and the learnerships was really of value in helping them, you know, to transition to be where they are in the labor market. So the weakest relative intervention, you'll see that it seems as if it's the work seeker support and the second chance metric. Those are the least cited as a significant interventions. So moving on, we then asked them, but why did you choose to participate? You know, why did you join, why did you apply for that program? And these are the results. But what is clear is that the reasons given tended to align to the type of intervention. So for instance, the bursary scholarship program and the TVET programs, the most cited reason was to get a qualification, which, you know, makes sense when you've been given financial support and you've registered. Obvious what you want is to achieve that qualification. And improving skills was noted as the most important reason for those who registered to be in the skills development programs, business management program, and entrepreneurship program, as well as the worker, as well as work seeker support. The second chance metric, individuals noted that their priority for them was also obtaining a qualification, whilst those in the EPWP and the NYSP programs and the PI and the like noted any income for was the reason why they decided to be part of the program. And lastly, as expected, the internship program was undertaken to gain work experience. You are aware that these days the employers always have a preference, a bias to people that have some form of work experience. So they felt that at least if I could just, you know, spend some year being part of that internship program, at least I'll be able to, get another better job. Okay, now I'm gonna skip this one. Okay, just quickly, just to give you a sense of the working seeking methods, this is quite important because even if there can be opportunities, but when the unemployed don't know where to start, or how to seek how to get in touch with employers, then it's not so helpful. So the most common, which I think has also been captured in literature, people are still responding to job adverts. So that was the most common, submitting CVs to prospective employers. So people are dropping off CVs. Reliance on social networks, that one has always been the most common, but it makes sense because in the previous slide we indicated that most of the people relied on their lecturers and the like for guidance and information on how they can pursue some of these opportunities. And walking door to door, it's still happening in this age. People are still, walking door to door to drop off their CVs and hoping to be called back. So the least common, because we had given them quite a long list of methods and they had to indicate. So the least common was going through the counselors and placing adverts of flyers regarding respondents' services or notice boards. Okay, I won't go through this one because it's really the repetition. There were not much differences between males and females. Both were still sending CVs, using internet, answering job advertisements. So, okay, so other approaches to looking for employment that came up strongly nowadays is online searching is coming up as very prominent. People are beginning to rely a lot, especially the youth, on the internet, on SA Youth, Harambee, the Moi Messenger app, and so forth. And yeah, registering on online databases has also been reported. And we just noted there that we have to begin to think creatively about how, about reducing the data cost to enable them to, continue using this method to look for employment. Okay, so here quickly just on some of the challenges to finding work, because as the researchers we can theorize, but it's always useful to hear their perceptions on what do you think is a key reason why you are still without a job, and what are the challenges. Okay, so you'll see here some of the factors that respondents indicated on their ability to find jobs included lack of experience, so that came up quite strongly, over 51%. The transport cost is also coming up very strongly at 47%. I heard on the news that the Western Cape now has introduced that program where people that are looking for employment don't have to pay for transport costs. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting initiative. Okay, then lack of internet and distance to work. I guess that also speaks to the issues of the transport cost. Okay, so I'm gonna skip this one. Okay, so this one just look at job search duration, which is is quite important, just to get a sense of, okay, for those that are unemployed, how long have you been unemployed? Of course, we know that the more time you spend out of the labor market, it gets really difficult for one, you know, to get back on. So we asked them to indicate how long it took them to find work after completing the most significant program. But the last part, you'll see that there are those that said, no, we still don't have any employment, we still don't have any job, but I'll pick up on that in the next slide. But again, we always worry when we see some signs of long-term unemployment, because, as I said, the longer you're out of the labor market, you lose skills and employer bias towards the people that are currently not involved in anything. So, yeah. Sorry, that one. Okay, so we move on to quickly look at the perceived benefits of interventions. So respondents were asked whether their career expectations were met after completing one or more program interventions. You remember the slide where they had broken it down to say they needed experience or they needed income and so forth. So this was just like a follow-up to say, okay, this is what you went in looking for, this is what you're seeking. How would you evaluate the program you participated in now in terms of, you know, to what extent did it meet your career expectation? So in total, it is evident that the respondents to this question noted that career expectations were met to some or great extent, which is a positive finding, with very few, you know, saying otherwise. And what is interesting is that it's participants in the NYPS and the PI program were the ones that reported had the greatest percentages of respondents who believe that the intervention had indeed met their career expectations. Okay, so this is the continuation. But it was still more than 50%, so it's still sizable percentages that indicated that the intervention met their career expectations. Those that had participated or were recipients of bursaries or scholarships, or those that have participated in these other programs such as the internships and the skills development programs. So there's also another positive finding. So lastly here, this one is just based on the focus group discussions, and it begins to give us tangible examples on why some beneficiaries felt that the programs met their expectation. So for instance, this one said it allowed them the opportunity to complete the qualification, again, qualification, gained skills and experience, source of income, and so forth. But what I find interesting here is that some of the responses we got, it's actually beyond learning some technical skills. It's more about, you know, mastering those transversal skills, you know, like learning to be independent. So we're shifting towards recognizing the importance of those soft skills. Again, it's just to say they are not just looking for intrinsic satisfaction, you know, salary and so on, but they are also seeking and interested in intrinsic satisfaction, ability to impact the lives of others. Okay, so quickly on the exposure to skills training and development. So in the context of the changing nature of work, in particular with increased digitalization, we were interested to assess to what extent do they think that they've had the opportunity to develop the skills which are now in demand in the contemporary workplaces and setups. So as a start, we ask them to indicate if they've attended any additional training or any skills development program, apart from being part of the formal education and training intervention we're talking about. And across all interventions, it is people who have been part of some bursary programs or who had participated in an internship program who indicated that they have had an opportunity to attend training. So it is possible that those people, were in programs and they had been paid by their employers. So yeah, so this is something would be interesting to investigate further in terms of the funding for training. So we also probed further on the nature of the training and skills development received, and interestingly, overall beneficiaries. If you look at the bottom, so it's beneficiary and non-beneficiary, you'll see that it seems as if those that were beneficiaries or have participated in some program compared to those that were not exposed to any program are the ones who indicated, to have mastered some additional skills. So for instance, 32% of the beneficiaries across all intervention types indicated to have received some soft skills development training compared to only 7% of the non-beneficiaries. So the other common skills that were gained during the beneficiaries, among the beneficiaries include things like leadership, like management skills and technical skills and so forth. Again, it's speaking to the importance of the transversal skills in the contemporary labor market. Okay, so in addition, we also asked them to assess their degree of digital skills, and you'll see that quite a big proportion of the beneficiaries thought that they had excellent digital skills, with 45% of beneficiaries compared again to the 33%. And again, this begins to speak to the effectiveness or the usefulness of these programs they have been involved in to expose them to this kind of training. Okay, so this one is a repetition. Let's skip it. Okay, let's just skip this one. Okay, so let's move on to the trends in the labor market transitions. Okay, so this slide begins to provide a comparison of how beneficiaries and non-beneficiaries fared between 2018 and 19 and 21 and 22. So those two time periods. And again, you'll remember that we indicated that we tried to better, the COVID in the way we structured the instrument, also in the way we did the analysis. But what, just if you glimpse at that, what is evident is that in 2018 and 19, there was a large proportion of people that registered to be in part-time employment, which seems to disappear when you look at the other figure. It seems as if we lost them, they shifted into to the unemployment category. So again, that just begins to show us some of the impact of COVID, and when we know that people did lose jobs, companies did close down. Okay, again, I won't spend time here, but across the different programs, you will notice the high prevalence of part-time employment, people that are in part-time employment, also high numbers of those that are studying, and the issue around part-time employment, obviously, we need to think about the nature of work. If they are part-time, it might be, of precarious nature. Okay, let me just spend a bit of time on this one. So here we're looking at the employment status transition. So we are comparing 2018 and 19. So we did some interesting analysis here in terms of trying to figure out who moved around between the two periods, 2018 and 2022. And what emerged is that the majority of people in the different destination there was a change in their employment status, and there were very evident and visible swings to movement to unemployment between the two periods between 2018 and 2019. So you'll see the rates in that column of the unemployed. And if you look at the first column, if you look at the very first column where we indicate the labor market destination, so we had about 43 people when we started, but towards the end the number kind of went down. Okay, so this is just a summary of the actual destination of where they were when we interviewed them. So we've broken it down by the different destinations to say, are you currently employed? Are you self-employed? Where exactly are you? Because some people, go back to school when they're unlucky with finding employment. So what we did is just to look in detail into the situation of people in the different labor market destinations. So for instance, if I just take you through the employed, so we just offer a bit of a profile of, okay, so who is employed, who is unemployed, who is self-employed, who decided to continue studying. So overall, when we just take that slice of people that are unemployed, those that are employed, it's evident that we've got slightly higher proportion of males than females. And what is also a big concern for us is that the majority of persons with disabilities, we were also able to pick up, that most of them indicated to be unemployed. But again, we are aware of the discourse around the barriers and the challenges persons with disabilities face as they try to transition to the labor market. Okay, so here we're looking at the distribution of those in employment by program type to say, okay, you are saying you are employed, but what training, what program were you part of? Did you benefit from work seeker support? Were you, with the PI program? So what program did you participate in? Okay, so it's employed beneficiaries and arising from the most significant intervention. So you look at the bar at the bottom, the solid ones denotes full-time employment, and then at the top it's part-time employment. So you'll see that most of the employed seem to be concentrated around the internship, so they mostly came from or they underwent the internship or part of the leadership programs, and those that have been awarded bursary or scholarship programs compared to the other program types. Okay, for those that are employed, it's to determine the quality of their employment. We also ask them, more questions about the nature of their employment contract, just to help us understand what kind of jobs they have. And this information really helps us to establish whether, what kind of contracts, they are standing basically in the labor market, and it gives us good, sense of the quality of the jobs they are holding. So in this table, okay, so we are saying obtaining employment is really not an adequate indicator, but we have to move beyond that. We need to be able to understand the characteristics and then see if it really is a quality job. But a positive finding indicates that across all interventions, fixed-term contract appears to be the prevailing norm for most of the beneficiaries, with 80% of the 640 or so employed beneficiaries holding such a contract. And it was only 11% of beneficiaries who possessed a permanent contract compared to the 2% who had no contract at all. So you can see the quote. So this is the quote from one of the beneficiaries where she was saying, nowadays they only offer contractual employment rather than permanent position, but at least through this contract we do gain work experience and build our CV, so it is better than nothing. I thought that was quite a humbling quotation, that it is not, what we are seeking, but we are learning a lot through participation in that program. Okay, so here, so when analyzing the monthly wages of those that are employed, there were really small differences between those that were exposed and those that were not exposed to the training. So about over 2/3 of the employed, about 68% reported to be earning, so on average between 2,000 to 4,500. Yeah, we've kind of highlighted that. So that is the average of how much many of the people in this program are taking home. Okay, so here we're looking, also the question was, and again it speaks to issues of retention, to what extent are we keeping our interns, our trainees? So we ask whether they're employed by the organization where they did their last intervention, and sadly most program providers don't hire, they don't retain, which is the reason why some fall back into employment. And it links to the story around the transitions, that they are no longer linear. It's not like you're gonna finish your job, finish school, get your first job, then get promoted or move to the other one, but sometimes people do fall off and they have to start again. You'll see the quote there, I was hoping to get an internship, therefore secure employment so that I can provide for my family. But unfortunately, that did not happen. So yeah, so as many of the companies tended not to retain, to retain. And then, okay, so this is just the economic sector. I won't spend time on this one, pretty descriptive. But what was evident is that the public sector appeared to be the largest employer across the most programs, because then we asked them to indicate whether they are private or NGOs or public sector. So the great prevalence of private sector in those is in those who receive business management and entrepreneur training. However, public sector was just the largest employer of people that had participated in this program. Okay. Then we also just, in the report, it's nicely detailed, but because of time, I'm not going to go through everything. I'm just trying to wrap up so that I can hand over to Shireen, who's going to just give the overall summation, as well as take us through the recommendation. But then we just go on to give just the profile of who are people that are self-employed and what are the reasons. Yeah, so I'm not going to go into detail, but this one is just, it also provides a breakdown of those that are in self-employment by intervention type, to say, okay, what kind of training did you get? So again, it's notable that again they had participated in some leadership or internship program. Most of these people then indicated to be self-employed. Okay, and we went further to ask what are the reasons for self-employed or of being self. Why did you decide, to be self-employed? Again, recognizing the challenges that youth face in terms of unemployment. And as you can see, the main reason cited is not being able to find a job. Yeah. And another key challenge is lack of support. Yeah. There. And access, then we also just tap on to issues around access to support. What kind of support did you get? Did you get any support? And as you can see that the large overwhelming majority said they had not received any support, but then we did not follow up to establish whether they did reach out, from their end. Okay, I won't go through the challenges. I think this is well known, the issues when it comes to the challenges that are facing small business, self-employed, the issue of access to funds, competition from similar businesses, operating costs, as well as the insufficient demand. But of course, we know that lack of access to capital to markets really represents significant impediments to their entrepreneurial success. Okay, so I won't go through this one, but just one thing to note that many appear to be predominantly informal, or what we call them as survivalist, with the majority really indicating to be earning anything between up to 3,000 rand. And again, it just begins to, speak volumes about the precarity of such businesses. Okay, so, and then we also explored further with those that are in full-time study to say, what were the reasons for you going back to school? And as I said, it begins to demonstrate the convoluted nature of youth transitions into the labor market. That there is sometimes a number of breaks that negatively affect their ability to rejoin the labor market, with very few, as we've seen, smoothly transitioning to the labor market. Okay, so some of the reason to find a job, to improve my chances of getting a job, get a higher qualification, to increase knowledge and understand the industry. Okay, we also did a nice profile of the unemployed. Okay, so this one is on the main reason for being unemployed. It's also very nice and useful, very insightful to hear it from those that are going through, the state of unemployment, to get to hear what are the key issues. So what came out is, around the scarcity of jobs that was also flagged to say we are not getting job opportunities because there are very few. Lack of experience, lack of appropriate skills, and so forth. But you can see that they are also aware of the importance of job experience. You see the last quote, the challenge I face in securing a job is lack of work experience. And the other one saying, I think it's experience. A lot of companies require job experience. Most of the youth do not have that work experience. Okay, so I think, yeah. No, I think let me leave it here and hand over to Sherry to run with the summary conclusions.
Thank you very much. Longi, if you could just bring the computer closer. So I think we've had an overload of information, maybe just a bit of a breathing procedure. What we're going to do now is just consolidate and say so what? What does this mean? What are we hearing? And what should we do? Okay. Okay. I just want to go back to one slide there. Just go. You can go back. Okay, so I think I just want you to look at this slide again. And what is it telling us? And what message we're trying to convey here? And what we're saying is that the 2021-22 position is a reflection of what COVID did to the economy. It's not a true reflection of what the impact of years of interventions from 1994. What is a better indicator is the results of the 2018-2019 pre-COVID. And I think that's the message we need to look at. Our ability to recover back there and then build on from there. Not that we can ignore what COVID did, but if we're evaluating, we need to use the 2018-2019 as the indicator to say, that's what it did achieve or it didn't achieve. I don't know if that sort of point just becomes a little bit more significant in understanding. All right, I'm going to, sorry, it's not moving. Just push it for me. No, I'm going forward. All right, so yeah, okay, so let's go on. So at the outset, we already said there is a challenge for us around attribution. Being able to attribute that, this program, this policy has contributed to this when the sample size and the population that we had was skewed. We did not have a database. We did not have a database which said, these are the 4 million people across South Africa who participated in every single program. We couldn't get that, even though some of the departments do have that information, because of POPIA. Right? So it was just a no-brainer, we couldn't do it. We had to go out into society through Facebook, Twitter, whatever, surveys, whatever, and say to people, will you participate in the study? It has a bias, because people self-select into the study as opposed to retargeting people. So there's a bias there, and there's a limitation to what the study can tell you. And the fact is that for some programs, there were small numbers of participants. 100 participants spoke to us about some programs, and 300 or 500 spoke to us about other programs. So that's skewed also. So it doesn't give you enough of a nuanced capability to make inferences. So we need to make that as a caution. Therefore, difficult to generalize across. But we've mitigated that, and we'll speak to that we've spoken about that. So we've tried to align our findings with our findings with findings that are known in the general evidence base that we actually have, etc. And then, as Bongi said, the qualitative nuances. What is the lived experience of people, real people's lives, that matter? Okay, so the second one is the policy review, right? And I think we've covered that extensively, and we can see generally that policies have been designed to address needs. Be quite carefully, NSFAS, probably one of the most important policy interventions, has addressed its objective. It's increased massively people who've been previously disadvantaged. The profile of who is in those institutions has improved. Who's getting access to support has improved significantly. There's, however, challenges with the implementation of policy, which is the barrier, and the lack of standardization of implementation. So a classic example of that, which is in our report, is you've got Institution A, NYDA running second chance matric. You've got ETP CETA running second chance matric. You look at the results there. The overarchingly second chance matric is performing very poorly, with 16% of participants who actually get into the program leaving it with a matric. 16%, despite vast investment. But when you compare the two institutions, NYDA is doing way better on their performance levels than ETP. And that's just one example, but there's other examples across sectors. That's not acceptable. We can't live with that kind of thing. We can't accept 16% throughput rates on an investment that we know is critical. We're doing something wrong. We're excluding certain people because of age limits. We are not providing relevant types of quality intervention to ensure a better throughput rate. It's the same story with TVETs. So something's wrong. Okay, and so therefore, the design of policy sometimes needs to be nuanced in terms of improving targeting, improving this one-size-fits-all doesn't work for you, etc. and designing and addressing the blind spots, the gender blind spots, the disability blind spot, that assume that a person with disability can go for that EPWP employment opportunity when there isn't transport, there isn't this, there isn't that, etc. And a good example is how certain institutions like DIA have particularly enabled persons with disability to work in their program, including in working fire, not to go as persons with disability to go into firefighting, but to do administration or to do other things. So it's that enabling environment which is not necessarily prevalent. Exposure. Oh, this assumption, and I'm saying this to you as a department that's responsible for PES, the level of awareness of PES across the whole population was deeply concerningly low. They knew more about NYDA, they knew more about PI, Presidential Youth, than they knew about what PES offers, how to access it, etc. That's not acceptable when that's a quarter. But I was saying that to you because that comes from the evidence, not from sucking from the evidence. Business support services, vast investments on SME development, targeting youth, financial resources, etc., etc. Yet, very little awareness of what's available, very little awareness of how to access it, where to access it, etc. In our study, our field workers kept saying to us, every time they were asking questions, people say, where do I go get this help? How do I get this support, etc. They just don't know. There isn't a one place repository that helps them. We've got SA Youth Mobi. It's doing wonderful work. It's reaching about 2 million people. How do we increase that? How do we increase the reach of what the NYDA and other institutions cover, etc.? The people who access bursaries and internships, right, were the majority of the respondents in this program. So there's a bias in terms of the results there as well. There's also something about what we call positive bias, positive intervention bias. When you are in a program that you've been offered, you're more likely to say positive things about it because you participate in that program. That's a positive bias. We have to watch against that. And that, as the work seeking, I think we've covered that previously. I'm not going to speak to that again further. So the work seeking and the work access, we know it. It's poor. Like the ability to transition labour market is dependent on your first job, and thereafter your second and third, etc. jobs. Okay. And if only 36% reported access to a first work experience, the majority had no work. One of the respondents said to us, we must tell government to ban the requirement of work experience. Because she says it's a vicious cycle. I can't get the work experience because nobody wants to give me jobs, but yet on the CV there says work experience. And the interventions, the work integrated interventions that are being implemented the internships, the learnerships, are ways in which, but then we need to scale those up more significantly to give many, many more learners that, because the relationship between having a work experience, having an internship experience, and your ability to get in the labour market is exponentially higher. And I think they discourage workers as well. Right. Benefits, again, Bongi spoke to that quite deeply. Lots and lots of benefits that people speak to. Whether those benefits are perceived and whether they actually apply, that's a different matter. We haven't even dwelled to that, etc. But the fact is people did get qualifications. Although there were lots of people who had accessed ETDP, CETA, or other CETA kind of interventions who said, 3 years later, I'm still waiting for my certificate of completion, and I can't use that to go and get a job. I don't have that proof that I completed X, Y, and Z qualification, right? Autism training, etc. And these are administrative barriers that we've created, not other kinds of technical or macroeconomic, but administrative barriers. If we're talking about transitioning into the fourth industrial revolution, our digital skills, and we've got young people who are so smart, savvy with their cell phones, etc., and their TikTok, and all kinds of, and yet we have, for other kinds of digital skills access, we have such low levels. There's some really good initiatives currently that are happening, like Microsoft partnering with South Africa to ensure that 300,000 young people get AI training. I don't know how long that will take or whatever, but those are the kinds of initiatives that we need to ramp up So that, and it should not start after school, it should start in school, during basic education. Oh gosh, did we lose that? Okay, let me use my computer and without being able to, can you just do that? Okay, we're going to have to wait for this to connect. All right, but I'm going to carry on speaking because of the interest of time. I'm not sure how this thing, well, I think something's happening. How do we get it to screen? Does anybody know how we get it to show? Do I press that? Can you see, but it goes right there? Okay, so I'll just have to skip. So, okay, so I'm basically going to just try and summarize the last few points, etc. But hundreds of slides still to cover. No, not to cover, to go into, to get to the point that I was talking to you about in terms of that. But we're almost there. Apologies for this technology challenges that we're all experiencing. Okay, we're almost there, right? So, work seeking exposure to interventions, labour market. This is the results that we found as at 2021. But remember, I said to you, also compare that against what I showed you in the earlier slide, and what the, but overall, the pattern is more unemployed, fewer full-time employed, more part-time employed, a small percentage of further study, and equally small percentage of self-employed. When we know that the jobs are not going to be in the formal labor market, they're going to be in SMEs. That's Brazil, that's other countries where the employment potentially is in SME growth, not in formal jobs, etc. And so we need to address that. The completion rates, I think we've spoken about that repeatedly as well, and COVID exacerbated that. And not all young people have actually indicated an interest and a willingness to get into SMEs. And we need to address that barrier, and that's something to do with even our schooling system that needs to start inculcating an entrepreneurial spirit. Because South Africa has been criticized by the World Bank and UNDP for the low levels of entrepreneurial activity in our country compared to other African development and other developing countries, including Brazil, Philippines, etc. Okay, I think I want to go into, so I spoke to you right at the outset about the DAC, the 5 DAC OECD indicators that we use to measure, and relevance is one of them. Is the interventions relevant to the problems in the country? Resoundingly yes, no question about it. Okay, and I'm not going to deal with the detail. It's multifaceted, it's expansive in nature, it addresses both demand side and supply side. So yes, it's there. I'm not going to deal with that. Effectiveness, limited evidence of positive labour market access. So is it achieving that ultimate outcome and that impact? No, not at the scale. To a limited scale, yes. In some programs, much more than others. So your Funza Lusaka, for your Lushaka, like your bursary programs, etc., are definitely enhancing skills, definitely enhancing employability, enhancing promotions, etc., etc., etc. Right? There may be issues around targeting. We were finding in another study that we did that people, if we're looking at targeting people with low incomes, disadvantaged, etc., not necessarily that the education bursaries are going to people who are fairly high paid, fairly highly qualified already, but more of the resources are going towards those people than to others. And more older people are getting some of those bursaries, plus 40 in one of the studies that we did. So effectiveness is a serious problem, and that's the efficiency, serious problems with inefficiencies, duplication of programs, lack of coordination, alignment between institutions about running similar kinds of programs, wastefulness of resources, etc., etc. It's a litany of, but we're not efficient at all. Impact, we unable to assess comprehensive impact. The lack of basic theories of change. What is the outcome expected of the second chance matric? Is it just to make sure everybody gets a matric certificate? Or is there, which is an output, or is there a broader goal that we want to see more of those people get into artisan training, not expecting them to university, and are we getting them into the artisan path or not? Right? And should we be looking at other kinds of programs that help people to achieve not a second chance matric, but another kind of work that gets them into artisan? But we don't have that theory of change that helps us to understand that, to assess, therefore, whether second chance matric is successful or not. Right now, we're measuring it on its literary output, and we're saying it's a disaster. There's still exclusions in terms of some racial disparities, particularly rural disparities and disparities in gender, as well as disparities with persons with disabilities. The greatest impact across all those programs is NSFAS. And the evidence is absolutely clear. There may be problems with NSFAS, but the overarching message must not be forgotten. Sustainability, for the level of investment, and we're talking about billions every year, it's the heavy reliance on the state to deliver this will not change unless we transform the model and bring in private sector, bring in other stakeholders to actually support the process. So what are the recommendations then? There are 9 broad recommendations, and I'm going to run through them very rapidly and not go into the detail. They are initiatives. The shift to your department, right, is part of that better alignment. Shift of the mandate around employment is part of that better alignment, strategic alignment. But the reality is that you already have so many role players in the sector. You've got the presidency, you've got your department, you've got NEDLAC, you've got the government economic and social clusters, and you've got institutions like NYDA and ETDB, CETAs, etc., etc., etc. And without a proper, definite, clear accountability mechanisms, clear issues around who is responsible for what, etc. You've got the National Pathway Management considering the presidency. What's the relationship between you and them? What's the relationship between you and what the NYDA is doing, or who's collecting data, or the fact that DSI is doing a lot of work around youth and the knowledge economy? What's the relationship between all these stakeholders? If it's unclear, all you're doing is adding dough to the pot. You're not addressing the overarching problem unless you systematically engage with that issue. The National Pathways Management clearly seems to be a very good initiative. It doesn't seem to have mandatory powers to require departments to report. So you go to that website and look at the dashboard. Some departments are reporting, others are not. The reporting is different. Some departments report much more in detail than others have. So we've got different reporting systems, different kinds of information. How do we compare? We're doing apples and oranges here. We can't do that kind of, it's inefficient. We're not leveraging the strengths and the capabilities of institutions in the ecosystem, including the capabilities of research councils like ours, or the universities, etc., to help generate the research knowledge that you need to inform your policy. Without having to invest huge amounts of money to pay for research. You've got PhDs, master students, etc., who all need to do studies, enabling them to identify the priority themes that you want makes their research relevant to you. And they would welcome that. We have a collaboration with UKZN, eThekwini Municipality, and all the other higher education institutions in KZN that's precisely trying to do that. Every year, a research symposium that helps to bring the evidence to eThekwini to say, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that right, etc. Or here's a study that says water purification can be done better, or whatever. But it's about collaborating. So I'm going to rush through this because of time. Next, redefining success. The focus on just counting numbers of jobs, counting the numbers of work opportunities in EPWP, right, is not an end in itself. Right? It's about sustainable livelihood pathways. At the end of that EPWP contract, sometimes you only get it for 56 days in a year, sometimes you get it for 100 days in a year or whatever, is not sustainable. Right? The PI program showed us, Presidential Youth Employment Program, where people were given employment for 1 year or 6 months, etc. There was a flow of income into those communities. A very recent study just published by Harambee has showed that not just did those 300,000 that went to DBE get incomes. But it contributes because they analyze the data against a big supermarket chain where these young people were spending their money, etc. And were able to identify the outflows of those funds in those communities into those businesses and into generating employment opportunities, contribute to the economy. Okay, we haven't done a full, statistical modeling, etc. They haven't done that as yet. Nobody else has done it. But if you did that kind of statistical modeling, SAM modeling, you might find that the impact on the economy, the replication impacts might be significant. But we don't know enough about that. Career guidance. We used to have, when I was in school, many, many decades ago, we used to have career guidance counselors in schools. They don't have full-time, but they were there. We're missing that, and young people are floundering, they don't know where to go, and everybody thinks university is the only place to go. And that's an inverted model. In Europe, in the rest of developing China, the model is inverted with fewer university graduates and more in the technical spheres. And we're not meeting our artisan targets. We're supposed to be producing 30,000 per year. We've been averaging 6,000 per year. But then even the ones that we have produced, they have high levels of unemployment of the water engineers or technicians. Sorry. Okay, it's there. Because the quality, the employers are saying the quality of education is so bad, I can't take them. So we've got lots of challenges to deal with there around sustainable livelihoods pathways. Building disaggregated youth profiles and designing targeted interventions. So we need to take Lerato as the person who's an unemployed youth person in rural Limpopo and look at what her profile is. And she didn't finish matric, but she had children or baby, whatever. Look at her profile and help build her into a career trajectory. Look at somebody who's an urban youth in Orange Farm in Soweto and look at what their profile looks like. And they've got a matric, they've even got a Tibet qualification, etc. They're different types of youths, and this one size fits all is a bit of a challenge. Okay, I'm moving on. Demands, the focus on demand side reforms. So we're doing a lot and spending a lot on the supply side, the education, training, etc. It's the demand side, and the demand side that needs to come from SMEs, that needs to come from businesses, etc. ETI was heralded as really the program to get, and the figures were presented. And then the researchers, and your Harun Borat's and a whole lot of other Seldrews, etc., started questioning what the ETI's actual outcome and achievement has been. Has it merely replaced businesses or subsidized businesses to have more people employed there, or has it increased the number of people that they're employing? And there are question marks about that, and I'm not going to go into the whole debate. You can read that in the Econ 3 and 3 debates paper that is written. Okay, so I think the issue of encouraging employees of the benefits of employing youth through wage incentives, etc., etc. Many years ago, there was this idea of a wage incentive for employees, which is still under discussion. Recommendation 5. This idea we saw with COVID, and the World Economic Forum in 2020, at the height of COVID, acknowledged that our youth is at huge risk, mental well-being risk, because of exposure. The social media exposure and other kinds of exposure, this global community that we live in, has placed our youth at huge risk. Psychosocial well-being is a huge problem amongst young people in South Africa. And particularly, why are our prisons full of black young men? That's not the picture we want to have. It's a picture we're seeing globally, in the US and other places as well. Right? And so integrating psychosocial support and well-being into all programs is a no-brainer. I'm not going to say more about that. Promote the growth in high-growth multiplier sectors which respond to international and national priorities for inclusive growth. Climate change mitigation has given us an opportunity to begin to expand the work in the green economy. We have 10% 90% of waste recycling in South Africa is happening. And 90% of that 10% of waste recycling is happening is done by the informal street waste pickers, right, who earn amongst the lowest. We could be upskilling those women predominantly. I mean, there's an interesting story of a university professor at Grahamstown University, Rhodes, right, whose mother funded her children, 5 children's education on her waste picker salary. Yeah, she'll tell you that story. It's amazing. The issue is that there is substantial opportunity for upscaling waste pickers to become waste recyclers, to become, waste collectors, etc., etc., etc. Right? Beyond their survivalist incomes, we're not maximizing that, and we're failing to address the fact that our landfills are filling up. Right? We could be expanding on the green hydrogen economy substantively. Currently, we're getting funding from GIZ, HSRC, to fund. We have 14 young women across disciplines who are now working in the green hydrogen economy. They're doing amazing stuff, producing papers, research activities, prototypes, etc. We could do more of that, etc. We need to support the revitalization. Our agriculture sector has gone down, and yet we are still able to produce and export food globally. Our fruit, our wine industry, all of that, we're still exporting. Our industry has become very mechanized. We need to recognize that. But we need to then upskill agri-entrepreneurs, youth agri-entrepreneurs, to respond to that challenge and take back our agricultural markets from the losses that we've had. In our renewable energies, massive, with the REAP program, the RIDE program that government is implementing, massive opportunities for wind farms, solar interventions, etc. The ECD program, government has recognized, and national ECD policy recognized that if we're going to include 11 million more women into the economy, then we need childcare support. Right? That childcare support with the informal neighbor, etc., it's not working. People don't have enough money to pay, they don't have good quality pay. You hear of children who've been raped in some of those centers, or hurt, or whatever. We've got to improve access to ECD and early childhood development interventions in general. Tourism sector, ecotourism as a huge ecotourism growth in other countries. The Philippines and Malaysia has grown exponentially. It's not growing in South Africa at the rate that we'd like it to go to. And then we have a 900 billion rand spend on infrastructure. Yet, where's the opportunities for artisans and other skilled people to work in that sector? Why are we not being able to do that? Yeah, so those are some of the challenges, and the need for ramping up our focus on SMMEs. And there is efforts around, those school-based market days, etc. We need once a year market day initiatives in schools. We need curricula that integrates SMME development and the mentality for SMME work, entrepreneurship, right from primary school. And it's been done in other countries. Policies to strengthen structural enablers for youth economic activity. Affordable, accessible public transport. You heard earlier about what's happening in some countries Bongi was referring to. In England, for example, between 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock, public transport for youth is supposedly free because it's about enabling unemployed youth. And they have the unemployed card, etc., and enables them to have access. The internet connectivity is one of them. Very high prices we're paying and very low accessibility in specific areas, right? So we need to address that, etc. Spatial transformation. We're pushing people towards urban areas. They're pushed to urban because there's no other jobs there, and then the urban areas don't have jobs. And yet, so the efforts around the district development model, all of these need to become not just COGTA's responsibility, but responsibility across every government to start revitalizing local economies with local opportunities, not manufactured ones, but what opportunities exist there. And there's some really interesting examples. If you go to the Bulungula incubator in the Eastern Cape, on the Garden Bridge, you'll see some of the interesting initiatives that incubator is doing to try and revitalize in deep rural Eastern Cape. And then access to technology for connectivity and digital literacy is a no-brainer. So this is what this next slide, leveraging technology for job creation. This, oh my God, technology is going to lose more jobs, etc., is not the main mindset that we need. We need to recognize that yes, certain jobs are threatened, but it opens up new frontiers for digitally enabled work. And therefore, we need to expand affordable, reliable technology. We were able to, in COVID, through the schools, give cheap tablets to learners for learning. We need to do that more broadly. Get the big international companies to give us those discounted prices, or start producing some of that stuff in South Africa, so that we can make technology more affordable, and connectivity more affordable. And then digital literacy. The Microsoft Yenza Izento program needs to be extended so that every school child has a Microsoft certified this by the time they finish primary school. Not high school, primary school. That's where we start. And we see our 3-year-olds and 5-year-olds playing with the laptops and stuff. They know how to do it. They have the capabilities for it. And then digital entrepreneurship, online freelancing. I know of a number of young people who are now online doing edits for people's documents and helping to do social media content, etc., for companies sitting in Europe or India or wherever, etc., because of that opportunity and earning dollars in the way. And then finally, and we've spoken about this throughout, M&E, management evaluation, and this requires a significant rethinking with DPME driving this process around how do we develop an effective monitoring and evaluation system that goes way beyond outputs to outcomes, etc. And it requires things like baseline studies. It requires things like every time you collect data, you put a disclaimer there. We will be sharing this data for research purposes and popular compliance, which makes it possible for you to use that data for evidence-based information. Instituting baseline studies, right? What is the situation at the moment in this community or in this project, and therefore what do we want to change, so that we can be able to report back and say a 20% change, a 5% change, all of which is successes and theories of change. So with that, thank you very much.
I was actually coming to take the mic. I can see that she will never finish. Thank you very much, colleagues from HSRC. You know our program is having 2 projects. There's another project by the University of Nelson Mandela. Unfortunately, the presenter couldn't join us due to some hiccups with arrangements, travel arrangements yesterday. She will take a presentation online. Dilika, are ready for Dr. Muliba? So that is Dr. Muliba from Nelson Mandela University, who is going to take over the second presentation. As I indicated, the 2 are very related. Then I want to skip directly to that one, and we will deal with questions once we get both the stories of these 2 institutions. We will combine questions, answers, and comments at the same time, and then wrap up. Okay, she's ready. I think the small challenge on the technology for you to be able to see her as she takes us through the second presentation. That sound is for connecting here.
It's from my side.
Then you can't hear them.
You're tied up again.
Just hold. Colleagues, we are back with Dr. Modiba. We apologize for the hiccup. And that is the doctor rep from the University of, in fact, Nelson Mandela University, that participated with the team that side on the other leg of this research project. So she will take us through without wasting time, because we don't know if there will be further technical problems. I'm handing over to her to take us through. Thank you very much. Over to you, Doc.
Thank you for many good afternoon, colleagues, and thank you for affording me and making this opportunity to present to you, and thank you for making this hybrid mode of presentation possible. So the study that we did took place between 2021 and 2022. So most of the data was collected in 2021, but we finalized the report and stuff in 2022. So our study is titled A Comprehensive Study of Existing Youth Employment Schemes and Schemes to Minimize the Retrenchment of Employees in South Africa. The study I did with my colleagues, Prof. Sidenishi and Prof. Nwadi, who are coming from the Economics Department, and I'm coming from the Department of Development Studies. So we are, because I'm in the same school within the Faculty of Business and Management Economics. So what I will be presenting to you is what actually inspired this research, the terms of reference, the objectives that were set at the beginning of the study, the methodological approach that we took in order to undertake the study, the schemes that we have, the sample that we looked at, and the highlights from the literature. Then we'll present the results, conclusion, and some recommendations. I hope I will not take long, because I know I'm the person between you and lunchtime. So, yeah. So in terms of the terms of reference, we're prepared to undertake a comprehensive study through the collection of data on existing employment education and retention schemes in South Africa. And we're also prepared to evaluate the trends, the impact, and the return on investment of all the employment creation and retention schemes that are in South Africa. In doing that, we set the three main objectives, which were to undertake the comprehensive study through data collection on the existing schemes that create employment and those that are focusing on employment retention. We were also tasked to evaluate the trends, the impact and the return on investment on all employment creation and retention schemes. We were also supposed to make recommendations based on the analysis of possible future programs and opportunities to scale up existing successful programs within limitation of resources. As we have heard from the HSRC, the gaps that exist there in terms of things that are there, those that are covered and those that are covered by the schemes. And our findings will also highlight that to show where we have covered some ground and where extra efforts are required. So upon addressing the above objectives and the following deliverables were made. We proposed and agreed on a data set with the Department of Employment and Labour. So it was an iteration process to present the schemes that we've identified, and they will advise us on what is still missing or what we could add. We also tabled a draft report on to the Employment Services Board for engagement and for further input. And then we presented the revised report to the Employment Services Board before we could finalize the full study. So the methodological approach that we took, it was a mixed method where we did the qualitative and the quantitative aspect and focusing using both approaches to gather the data. And the study used a convergent parallel mixed methods where neither dominates the other, and also making sure that we are applying them concurrently. The sample was predetermined by the schemes that could employ 10 jobs, and as I already indicated, the ones that we sort of missed, they were also added through our consultation with the Department of Labour employees. So in total, we covered 12 schemes that we recruited, and out of the 12, only 10 could participate in the study. And our analysis followed an inward-in and outside-in techniques in order to triangulate the data and track how it relates to the theory of change. So the interventions that are in place, their perceived impact, and the outcomes that are being evaluated at a program level by these schemes as well. And then we developed research instruments which were designed for different targets within our sample set. It was for the implementers, for the implementing partners, and the beneficiaries. And we used, because of the COVID-19, we had to use multiple methods so that we are not also tampering on the COVID-19 restrictions at the time. So we surveyed most of the questionnaire that we had, and where we needed to have, in terms of collecting our qualitative data, we used now telephones or MS Teams for us to conduct the interviews with the identified participants. We also, in terms of collecting the data, we used the question pro for us to be able to engage with the beneficiaries or the implementing partners and the implementers. And now, guiding this research for us, it was important to make sure that our evaluation is going to focus on the appropriateness of the scheme, its effectiveness and efficiency. As we have heard our colleagues from the HSR say that efficiency is quite a challenge. So at the scheme level, that's what we also looked at. So in terms of appropriateness, we wanted to understand the extent that the program has identified the need. Did the program align with the government and agency priorities? And we also looked at whether the program represents a legitimate role for the government. In terms of the effectiveness, we looked at how well did the program did the program produce or contribute to the intended outcomes in the short term and medium term, also aligning back to their main objectives or the aims of that particular program. We also looked at the unintended outcomes. This could be negative or positive, which were produced as a result. We also looked at the extent that changes can be attributed to the program. So what are the counterfactual evidence that we can draw from that particular findings of that scheme, and what were the particular features of the program and context that made a difference. And we also looked at how is the program going to be sustained and replicated. We've heard from the acting Director General that it is important to have sustainable programs. It is important to ensure that people are placed in decent jobs. So in order to do that, we also needed to look at this aspect of sustainability. In terms of efficiency, we focused on how the program has been implemented and the appropriateness and the processes that were taken to ensure the quality of standards for the particular scheme, and also if the outcomes of the program represent value for money. This now talks back to that objectives of does the scheme now provide return on investment. And then with the schemes that we evaluated, the 12 that we referred to, it was now the Extended Public Works Program, the Community Works Program, the National Youth Service, the National Rural Youth Service Corps, the Employment Tax Incentive. We could not engage with them, but what we did then, we looked into the literature to try now understand what they're doing and what has been said in terms of publications. And we also acknowledge that now relying also on what has been published through their reports or through the media, we might be missing other important stuff, but it was unfortunate that we could not get all of them to participate. We also looked at the Jobs Fund, which focused more on enterprise development, infrastructure development, support for work seekers, and institutional capacity building. We also worked with the Youth Employment Service, the Service Corps under the Army. We also, because of now the challenges of accessing other schemes, we had to also work with the ones that are more at a provincial level. For example, the Isicalu Youth Fund, which is based in the Eastern Cape. And then we also looked at the Employer-Employee Relief Fund schemes. So through that would be either talking to the implementer or the beneficiaries or the implementing partner. But as I take you through the findings, then you'll see who did we manage to speak to at that level. And now, in terms of now grouping them, so we have now the public employment programs, which included the EWP, the CWP, and the National Youth Services Program. We also had the Rural Youth Service Corps, and then the Employment Tax Incentives, the Jobs Fund, and the Youth Employment Service. And now for the others, which were not really the main, but were sort of giving us an idea of what is happening, included the Isicalu, and the Entrepreneurial Development Programs, and the Department of Basic Education's Employment Initiative, quite influential because during the COVID-19, it helped a lot in terms of creating employment, especially for the youth. So the key highlights from the literature, what we picked up is that in the labor market, there is a wide ecosystem that we need to consider, and also the definitions that also apply. So the definition that we adopted for our study was that of the South African Youth Policy, which indicates that youths will be those who are between the age of 14 and 35. So that was what we looked at. And the literature also highlights that access to technology and internet access presents opportunity to address some asymmetries that are out there. Our colleagues in the HSRC have touched on that, and also the required need to consider the fourth industrial revolution in terms of supporting the creation of employment and supporting those that are already in employment and marketing different programs that are out there. The literature also highlighted the interventions offering the reservation wage, which are not attractive. For example, also we've seen how there are a lot of opportunities in agriculture, but most youth are not interested on. The other challenge was the structure of qualifications. As colleagues have already mentioned, we need to move away from needing everyone to have formal degrees. So how would now the TVET come into the space, and also now encouraging the youth to also consider this avenues. Another challenge for us, especially now that I'm talking as an educator as well, and that's what we also share with our students. When you are not managing in a degree, please consider the TVETs. So I think there is that also a reluctance from the students to consider the TVET, but I think as a country, that's something that we need to keep reminding our youth that not everyone should go to the university. There are other options in TVET institutions that could help scale them. The other challenge that was highlighted by the literature as well was the legislations, where there are multiple legislatures, and their relevance is also to be questioned. So it depends now with the sector where they are being applied. And the other thing was the significance of data. So accessing and using administrative data is critical for impactful interventions. So do we have access to the data? How do we use it now to also influence future planning of other schemes, or also to improve those particular schemes? I've touched on the agriculture one, and the other thing that they point out is to ensure that we need to avoid now engaging partners and incentivizing them like that they're already doing. So, because if we're doing that, if a sector is doing a job and now we want to incentivize for doing that, it becomes a dead weight loss. So rather, if they are doing something, let's find other ways of partnering. And if there needs to be, and also look at whether there is a need to incentivize or not. So not all businesses should be incentivized. So we need, the government needs to look now at the pros and cons of incentivizing. So what the literature also highlights to us is that now beyond labor legislations, many companies aim to de-risk hiring practices. And this also means that not taking a risk on unemployed youth because of lack of technical skills or lack of work experience, which is also was what our colleagues in the HSRC were presenting on. So now if you look at the typology now of the labor market of the youth in South Africa, is that we have those that are economically, they are teenagers, and those that are economically active. So now we are saying in terms of now programs or interventions for the ones that are not economically active, we need to look at, is there an opportunity to get them into education, the TVETs that we're talking about, for example, versus the academic structure of universities. And if also they are not in employment, what has led to that? Are they being discouraged, or is it problems of now also dropping out of school, therefore they would now better to have a pathway in terms of their future? So we also need the initiatives and schemes to unlock opportunities and employment creation, also provide emotional support, as colleagues were referring to the problems of mental health, which is a huge thing now within the youth that requires extra support. And we believe that with the right skills as well and support, we could help them maneuver the challenges that they face. And also with proper interventions, then they will be employable. For example, if you look at this, then they can get job search skills. They can be able to be exposed to equal opportunities and create networks. Also, geography becomes a challenge because we found that those that are in rural communities would not be exposed to opportunities versus those that are in urban areas. So what do we do to close that gap? And also the sector of education and training comes into say, where in cases where they are not upskill them. And for those that are economically active, they are sort of covered because now with the macroeconomic policies, they need to lower cost to job creation, address school to job transitions. There is a need to also improve employability of the inactive population and make job search more effective. And also in terms of information asymmetries, we also need to close on that to ensure that everyone is participating. We also need policies to ensure decency of work employment, fair treatment, and also retention of schemes. Our Director General there was also talking about, do we have now decent jobs that this young people can work in? And also, is it going to be long term or is it a short term thing? So how do we now ensure that whilst they're in employment, it's decent jobs and it can be long term? And in cases where now they need to be let go, what is in place to make sure that their bills are supported, they do not lose that income, because as Tandani has also indicated, when we are losing jobs, it's not only affecting one person, but it could be 10 people that are going to be affected when one person loses a job. So how do we close those gaps there? So there is a need for retention, easy mobility, the decency of the work conditions that we spoke to, and work tenure as well. So now, in terms of the results, some of the things that we noted from the schemes that we covered is that there is a plethora of schemes, and with possibilities of some youth falling the cracks because now not being able to put them to the right schemes. So now the information part and the awareness aspect also comes in here. Do youth know where to go for employment, and do they know where to get the type of employment that fit their skills or their qualifications? And also the political interventions, the political interference, especially in terms of recruitment, how do we manage that when it is a problem? And also schemes need to consider vulnerabilities within the youth groups. So those that are disabled, what are the options for them? The ones that are in rural communities, are they well exposed? And if only opportunities exist at urban areas, how do we move now the rural youth to be able to be employed there if they do not have relatives that are living in urban or suburban areas? And also ex-ante inequalities, how do we manage that? Because there is a need for partnerships with institutions that support and accommodate the disabled groups. For example, the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities can come in handy here to support that particular group. And also technology presence is hope for equal access. We also acknowledge that with technology itself, we would be creating some problems because of the digital gap that exists in South Africa. So how do we also use technology to ensure that we cover everyone, but not also where we end up now using technology to exclude. So technology, as well as we move towards it, how are we going to manage the disparities that are inherent in these technologies? The other issue was the lack of coordination and experience sharing within government, especially vertically. So from provincial to national and horizontally from department to department, because programs need to be talking to each other, and where they can actually share the lessons learned, they can do that so that it can help now improve what is already on board. Legislation revisions is also important thing that we observed. For example, the BBBEE level 1 recognition to participate under YES program. It's quite good because now it encourages more companies to support the YES program. So also we need additional legislations to support other programs that might come, or also how we make the most of the ones that are already there. Linking back to that aspect that I mentioned earlier, that we need to over-incentivize. Also, reporting is not done, or at least it's not done at time to measure the outcomes and for the programs to account. So some reporting uses sweeping general statements and no specific details are being provided on the programs, project that cannot collected or shared. And also when it's collected, it's also not clear whether it was on job creation or it was because of they are not recording that. So there is a need to report to improve the recording of the programs that are taking place. So in terms of the public employment programs, I'm going to take you through the EPWP findings, the CWP findings, and the additional youth service. With the public employment programs, the implementer is the National Department of Public Works, which is centralized at a provincial level, and the programs like the National Youth Service, and their target was to employ 55% of the participants. National Youth Service program started in January 2004, which I think you colleagues are aware of that, and its end date is supposed to be March 2024, which is fast approaching as well. A government initiative that aims to engage South African in community service activities. And in terms of the EPW phase, which started in the 1st of April 2019 and will be ending also on the 31st of March, which is around the corner. And its target was to create 5 million work opportunities. And with what we have discovered from the literature is that 2.6 million work opportunities have been created or were created by the 30th of September 2021. And I believe now that it would have changed by now. And the youth target, or within this now, a main target was 55% participation, which has not been achieved, and it's a red flag for us there. But at least 4% of youth participation was met during the end of phase 4. So it is it's promising. It's not all doom, but it is promising. Its goal also was to create work opportunities to contribute towards poverty alleviation and reduction of employment, so rather unemployment. And participants are recruited through engagement with community structures, and most beneficiaries are low skilled and unemployed. The challenge is a program is what was reported was that political interference is a challenge during the recruitment programs because they want to influence who gets employed and who doesn't get employed. Also a lack of interest of youth to set up jobs because youth will be picky. So there are things that they will do and the things that they think they will not do, which also talks to the need to also empower our youth to say sometimes you need to start somewhere. You cannot start with a dream job, but you can start low and grow from there. And the other issue that we identified was the winning strategies. For example, the beneficiaries are being provided with training where feasible to have skills for project implementation. Some participants are also being provided with training in business skills to run their own business, so that they, at the end of the program, they can start their own business, which also now says that now we need now other departments to come in here to assist. For example, the Department of Small Business Development will play a major role there in supporting those that are starting their own businesses. So what is required is more funding for training, better monitoring processes that could use also the fourth industrial revolution. So if we're using now technology to monitor the processes, it would help in terms of now making sure that all the important data that is required is being captured, and it's also easy to access later on when we need to evaluate such programs. So in terms of the design, the implementers started it as being good, especially its target of putting the unemployed, and to also reach the youth proportion of 55%, which is that only 44% was made. And the implementation process, as we've already said, is decentralized at the provincial level, but it's also done by the public bodies. In terms of output, EPWP has contributed towards reduction of unemployment and alleviation of poverty, but not reaching its target, and the impact on the youth being minimal because of, not only because of the program, but the youth also not being attracted to what they are offering, which also says that maybe the program might need to redesign the activities that you. So some of the activities that they get, that they engage in is the identification of projects, selection of participants, implementation of those projects, and the monitoring and reporting of the outcomes, which is something that we are also emphasizing that it needs to be improved. The outcome there is that some get employment or start their own businesses, some are unemployed after the program. And also it will be interesting to note how many did start their businesses, and also are those businesses also now continue to survive, are they sustainable, or do they also face problems where they end up now in attrition, something that is also affecting our economy, because now we cannot maintain the employment that was created. The challenges that were faced by the EPWP, it's more on the design. Implementers indicated that it is difficult to coordinate different projects because implementation is being done by different bodies. Again, if using technology there, it might be easier to manage that challenge. And the implementation process was also cited to be difficult in terms of ensuring fair recruitment. This is now caused by that political interference that we spoke about. In terms of output, poor record keeping by the public bodies makes it difficult to measure the outputs, and this is one aspect that we really feel that needs to be improved. Its successes since 2012 and between the year 2012 and 2013, EPWP had created 4,185,462 work opportunities, and targeted creating an additional 4,205,730 work opportunities by the end of 2018-2019, which now says that at least over 200 of job opportunities were created now in the next cycle. Could they have done more? Maybe also what are the budgetary limitations then? In 2019, EPWP performance stood at 73.2% against its 5-year work target, which represented an overall shortfall of 1,610,484 work opportunities to achieve the 5-year target, which again is not as bad, but again, given the high unemployment rate within South Africa, that isn't really enough. The program has also reported 4,389,516 cumulative work opportunities to date since the inception of phase 3, which is, I think it's a step in the right direction as well, looking at those figures. And going into National Youth Services Program, they train and provide relevant experience to young people over a 5-year period. They work with the National Youth Development Agency, which is more of supporting the secretariat services to the scheme, so they are not really involved except on the secretariat level. And it's aimed at involving South African youth in community service, in order to improve service delivery, build patriotism, promote national building, foster social cohesion, and assist youth in acquiring occupational skills that will enable them to access long-term employment opportunities. And they have targeted those that have completed grade 12 and have maths and science. Different stakeholders, they work with different stakeholders, project managers and top contractors. And also what we have identified there as a weakness is that they need to involve them more on a regular basis, but not when they are just collecting information from them. And then with over 25,000 youth trained since 2007, so it's also making some impact there. Its successes, many of the trainees were taken in by the contractors who trained them, and approximately 10% of the youth were assimilated in those companies. Youth who were trained went on to become artisans, and after the program, the participants have either been hired by contractors or are pursuing higher education, so they are upskilling themselves or have launched their own service firms. However, more collaboration with the commercial sector is required, so a lot of partnerships are still required to support this scheme. And the activities also include the project manager will select appropriate projects and goals where they will now fit the different youth in there. They will advertise the available programs to the teenagers, and the youth recruitment is done through testing and application and screening, which is, they said, is quite thorough. Practical and practical training of adolescents as well on various projects, and the youth's departure after completing their training. So they have the particular period, then they can decide what they're going to do. Some of the challenges that they face, challenges in engaging suitable local structures that represent young people, and they also cited political involvement in the recruiting process, similar challenges as those of the EPWP, and failing to identify adequate numbers of youth with minimal standards of grade 12 with method size. That could also talk to the advertising or the marketing of the program there as a challenge. Although annual goals were set for the National Youth Services Program on a national level, the targets have not been met in general. However, certain provinces have exceeded, so it is successful in other provinces and not in the others. It is also difficult to get different stakeholders to work together during training. That was one of the challenges that the implementers cited. Also, the placement of youth who have been trained is difficult in terms of productivity, so they are having those challenges there. They also need to have a greater impact in terms of outcome and better ways of scaling the programs that they have. So it is highly recommended that there should be additional funding for participant training and improved links with the private sector in terms of placement. And with the NARSAP one, it is the Youth Leadership Program of the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform. It was established in 2010 by the department, and its aim is to equip the rural areas with necessary skills needed to obtain employment and to contribute to rural development. They provide technical and vocational skills in areas, or rather in sectors of construction, agriculture, household profiling, welding, and resource management. And they indicated that all participants were given a stipend of 1,120 per month over a 2-year period. And then they had so far had recruited 16,138 rural youth in all the 9 provinces since 2010. And an investment of 631 million was injected into this program, which has translated to 39,304 beneficiaries that were benefiting from this. Also sort of indicating some level of decency there in terms of what they get for the employment, or rather the participation in the different programs that they participate in. What is required for them is they indicated that they need more money. And they were also happy that the beneficiaries are getting a decent salary, or rather stipend, as I've already indicated. Criticisms on this program is that the program lacks an exit strategies. So when they are done with the program, they don't have anything to do with them, because now they do not, it's not all of them that will be employed by a particular partner that is working with them. So exit pathways are required for the youth that are participating in this program. The program also focused on skills development, yet the skilled are still unemployed and they do not have businesses. So it might be also important for the scheme to make sure that they emphasize the importance of creating, for the youth to create jobs, thereby participating in small businesses. So finding ways of also creating employment and hiring their peers. The program also provided no support for employment opportunities for enterprise development. Again, this is a weakness that if they were partnering with the Department of Small Business Development, it could be easily closed. Also, the evaluation of skills transfer and success of the program has not been done thus far. The program needs to creatively link with markets, that is jobs and goods services market. And we could not really find out what was the problem in terms of securing this. So maybe there could be a way for the Department of Labor to help them to close that gap. The other challenge was that some implementers were not involved in the labor requirement activities, which made it difficult now to match them with the youth that were participating. So they would just provide training and pay. And one of the participants also indicated that it would have been beneficial if the program also included a driving license support, because that way when the youth are in the program, at least they will have a driver's license, which they could use if they are going to be involved in agricultural projects and they need to drive for school to be better, and also get other, because they had indicated that sometimes driving license is a requirement in some of the job opportunities that this youth will get. So that's one aspect that they thought that needs to be provided. And in terms of the rating, it received 51% in terms of its implementation, because the implementer said that the program was properly designed, so there is a need to improve its design. For the employment tax incentive, the ETI, this program was designed to entice firms to hire young job seekers by reducing the cost of hiring young people. And it's been active since the 1st of January 2014. Its motive also is to reduce cost and risk of hiring the youth, where firms are normally hesitant to hire these untested workers due to perceptions of difficult labor relations and regulations, which sometimes ends up creating dead weight and loss of possibility of job opportunities. And its review period is short term, which is 6 months. Some of its successes is that the ETI has claimed for 134,923 jobs in 2014 and 686,402 jobs in 2015. This implies that the ETI has supported approximately 5% of all jobs in the tax data set based on the individual and pre-tax certificates of the 2014-2015 tax year. Also, there was an increasing number of young people entering the labor force, and unemployment for this group rose from 39% in December 2013 to 42% in 2020. The amount that was now claimed for this job loss period from 2016 to from 2014 rather to 2016 was close to 6.3 billion. And I think this also supports what the Director General was saying, that especially during the COVID period, they were able. I'm mixing up my slides. That's the one on the test one. In terms of the challenges, no evidence of significant boost in young people because of ETIs are intended and unexpected. Consequences they are intended and unexpected consequences via assessment, and also because of we could now not get full details from them, it was also difficult for us to also bring in other challenges from them because we couldn't find much from the literature. In terms of the jobs fund, which was launched in 2011 and which also received a cash injection of 9 billion at the launch, its objective was to co-finance projects by public, private and non-governmental organizations that are aimed at job creation. They provide public funding through 4 categories under different windows, which are the enterprise development, the infrastructure investment, support for work seekers, and institutional capacity building. And they cover include the work readiness initiatives like Munyeta and skills accelerator like Habanwe. Its progress to date, that is now when we're doing the finalization of the report by 2022, 39,000 SMEs, which were majority black-owned, were created or rather supported, and then more than 16,000 black smallholder farmers were also supported, and there was a creation of 280,000 jobs, which are reserved for the youth. and it has also attracted co-funding on all the projects initiated. So they had that partner support which other programs did not have. The Youth Employment Service, which is a non-governmental organization, it provides unemployed youth with entry-level employment experience and training for a duration of 12 months. So what they do is that they reignite the youth with their domain, with relevant skills and experience to enter into the working environment. And then on completion of the course, the youth will receive a recommendation letter. We will also help them on how to craft their CVs, so provide them with references and a certificate of completion to show the modules that they have completed through the program. YES also offers 25 work-readiness modules, which provides the youth with, they also provide the youth with smartphones, which have various apps which they said also support them in terms of skilling themselves and preparing them for the labor market. It has created more than 60,000 work experiences, and it works with more than 1,500 partner companies that sign up, and they had reported also that more than 3.2 billion, and also these partner companies are at least spending towards 3.2 billion in youth salaries. And as already indicated in earlier on, is that they are these companies now that are working with AAS will be now are being incentivized by the government. So maybe that's why we are seeing that increased number of partners that are working with them. So the beneficiaries of YES are absorbed in different sectors. So it could be in accommodation and food services, agriculture, forestry and fishing, construction, education, manufacturing. It's many sectors that they cover. And the other important thing is that for those that do not now get placed in a particular company, they also own what they call hubs, where they will now put these hubs in communities and the youth will go and work there. So from what we pick up from the beneficiaries as well is that when they leave the YES program and get placed somewhere, the payment, their earnings sort of improve. For some they improve and for others they don't. And we also had those that could not be placed anywhere. So we had I think close to 1,748 which were not placed. If we see that here we have that question that says it does not apply to me, so it means that they have not received any job as yet, but at least a majority or at least over half of those that had participated will be linked to employment. YES absorbs between 32 and 42, that is 48 in current analysis between the period of 2021 and 2022. Percentage of the youth after which they are placed into permanent employment within the organizations where they were trained, and they have more than 600 BE levels awarded businesses that have worked with them. And some of the partnerships that they have maintained over the long period has been the Nedbank, ABSA, Isuzu, South Sanlam, and South Sea. So how it works is that corporate companies have 3 options to choose from: sourcing out skills and training for the youth. In return, they reap the BE benefits. So they would place a youth within the business by providing the 12-month work experience, or they would place the youth at an existing YES partner by sponsoring the placement of a YES youth in third-party enterprises. And this is done through implementation partners, so they are not involved in there, but they are working with implementation partners. That will be different sectors that I've showed in the previous slide. Or that will be the hubs that I was indicating, where they will now place these hubs in communities, and now youths will have access to these communities, and they can start their businesses there. They will provide them with containers that they would use to start their small businesses. So, YES, youth employing firms, the implementing partners, some of the things that we picked up from them is that there is skilling, reskilling, and upskilling that takes place there, and they enable Can you hear me? No, I thought I had lost connectivity. And they, can you hear me, colleagues? Oh, okay, thank you. And they are able to enable information diffusion because of how they also, because of the provision of the mobile phones that we spoke about, so it's easy for them to share any available information on employment with the youths that are subscribed to their programs. They can get all their marketing information and all that, so they are sort of exposed to employment information during the period that they are within with YES. They need to review incentives and internship schemes to avoid exploitation. That's what we think needs to happen there. And the interventions should be cognizant of the youth ecosystem. So who are they covering, and is it relevant for them? And also, how do they support them when they move on to the next level? And there is also emotional and related support, including competence building, office etiquette that provide them with. So it becomes like more like a holistic training that this youth would have. And then now with the provincial ones that we spoke about, it's the Youth Fund, which focuses on entrepreneurship. Isikalo was created in 2019, and they had a call for applications to send, and selection process that had started in August, and their first batch actually started work in March 2022, but apparently not all our DIS received their resources, which was one of the challenges, or the rather the shortfalls of the project. And only 15 projects could receive required support. So these are the small businesses within the Eastern Cape. With batch 2, they had only awarded them MOAs, and they were hoping to start working with them in 2022. When we had this interview, they said in 2022 that's when they would start implementing the project under those memorandum of agreements that were signed for 2022. And then for batch 3, they said that they already have the call that has been sent out, and was supposed to be in partnership with the NYDA, but the DGRT is responsible for everything. So the youth development, they couldn't do much there, except that I think also it's more like being playing secretariat role, as was noted with the previous program, the analysis one. Its successes was those 15 projects that we spoke about. And in terms of the design, it's well communicated because it was modeled from the land redistribution for agricultural development. So they were improving on a previous program that we had. So they were able to improve the weaknesses of LVAT, especially, and then they said that they include sectors to also facilitate support for franchises. The services sector was also included, agriculture and tourism. So it had become more inclusive compared to the one of LVAT. The requirements related to formality were efficient, as they are creating more enterprises that are formal. So support for informal enterprises is not supported. And post-participation in the scheme, there is an aftercare program that is supposed to further support beneficiaries. So there is that exit strategy that they provide to their beneficiaries. In terms of the challenges, the program did not meet its target, and that impacted their efficiency. The delayed provision, this was because of now the delayed provisioning of the applied equipment by the businesses was exclusionary, and also eligibility was a challenge because they indicated that this youth business owner would apply when they are 34, but because of now the red tapes that are involved in the process of selection now, by the time they are awarded, they have now no longer qualified because they are now above that maximum youth age that is required. So that was creating a lot of problems for them. And also the implementation process, the challenges there was the time lag, the price fluctuation, especially in terms of what the items that the business will be requiring. So in 1 year, the price is X amount, but then if they're going to fund now in the next year, that has changed and they do not now consider the inflation increase. So they'll just fund you for what you prepared in the previous year, which made it a problem for this, those that had applied. And there was no participation from the implementation partner, which is the NYDA. And at the time, they did not really have, we could not access the outcome because of now they were waiting for the 2022 year period to end so that they can see how did the program work. So what we can take from Isitshwalo is that it does support, it provides support to youth businesses, which aligns with the government's priorities of creating employment. And of course, they are doing that because of now they are also supporting the department, the DDF there. And then the concerns there is that this program's implementation lacked efficiency. And one other thing that was noted was that one of their goals was about 50 million to the participants in the program, so that was not made because of the provision of support in a non-financial. The challenge is the implementation part. Then we have the employment retention program. So we look at the TESS, the Unemployment Insurance Fund, and the CCMA's Section 189, the one focusing on dismissals related to operational requirements. So with the TESS, it's a 12-month maximum solution which benefits employers and employees in companies facing distress. It was reconstituted in October 2018, and where it's working with where the CCMA is the entry point for screening and receiving application to participate in the scheme. Aims is to prevent retrenchments amongst the employed by providing wage support to employers who have fully or partially closed their operations. And 59 billion had been dispensed to 5.4 individual workers in response to the pandemic alone. And we've had the Director General there saying that 60 billion was paid. So I think that was now an improved figure from what we had recorded now in 2021, which is quite good. Some of its criticisms is the decline in proportion of the 18 to 34-year-old age categories, TESS recipients over time, and youth who may have recently started working have limited benefits under the UIF compared to long-time workers. So this increases the vulnerability of youth, even with such schemes as TESS in existence. So it means now we have a gap here that needs to be filled, so that if they cannot be now funded by the UIF due to the length of working period, what else is there to cushion them? And with the ordinary UIF, when the employer terminates the service, all know an individual can apply for the unemployment insurance funds for the benefits. However, one cannot claim if they have resigned, been suspended, or absconded from work. So now that also creates another gap of those that now are out of employment and cannot be paid anything. Again, do you blame now the person who has left the employment, or do you blame the system for not giving support for them because there could be valid reasons for them to abscond or to resign? In terms of the CCMA's Section 189, it has been established to protect the rights of the players in the labor market through the Labor Relations Act of 66 of 1995, and it aims to minimize unfair and arbitrary retrenchments and minimize negative shock of loss of employment. It's significant, the significant increase in cases referred to CCMA, for example, 14% increase to 221,547 during the 2019-2020 financial year, compared to the 193,732 referred in 2018-2019. Also, the COVID issue there could have now created some of the problems there. And the CCMA state 42% of the jobs in large-scale retrenchment referrals to the 1,111 cases in rubber or tire manufacturing. On the other hand, only 11% of the 3,151 cases in agriculture were successful, and 17% of the 1,065 cases in motor manufacturing were also covered. Other sectors had zero success rate. The public health and social development, safety and security, that is the private one, tool manufacturing and wholesale. So this is the data that now we collected from the literature. And then other initiatives, skills development, there we're focusing on the technical, vocational and professional program, which is the community education training, and the second chance one. The third is the Community Learning Center, and it has main and satellite campuses, and its aim is to train, employ, and encourage self-employment. They train youth, secure jobs or self-employment, and also articulate with TVET colleges or universities for the youth who want to continue with higher education studies. It prioritizes unemployed youth and adults who want to finish general education or get technical training linked with employment or self-employment. And their target is to at least get 1 million young people nationally by 2030. Again, the question is 1 million sufficient given the high youth unemployment rate? Activities of the scheme include literacy, general education, and skills development. Recommendation is that there is a need to align training significantly with the labor market, and there is also a need to focus more on creation of new small businesses, and funding is critical again for this. Again, it goes back to now that close involvement or rather collaboration with the Department of Small Business Development. Then there's the relevance of training. That needs to be aligned with what the job market requires. So that's one of the challenges. And also, the implementer also indicated that it could be that the youth are not training because of now what is required in the labor market is not what they are also providing. The challenges in terms of recruiting were also noted because there's limited articulation opportunities with TVET colleges and universities. And also there are few available employers, so partners is also a challenge for this program. Challenges in implementing the scheme included lack of suitable facilities because using schools was not ideal, and they also had limited funding. The goals are not matching with the needs of the beneficiaries, so that's why there is no take up from the youth side. Therefore, there is a need for a more continuous improvement so the program can be improved so that it matches what the youth need and what the labor market also requires.
Dr. Mima?
Yes.
I'm sorry, we are pressed for time, and we kindly request you to draw closer to concluding slides so that we can move. I think we were scheduled to finish 1:45. I'm sorry. But now it's almost 2:00. If you can try to wrap up first.
Yes, okay, I can move directly to the study conclusions. So, in conclusion, what we have discovered, as indicated earlier, is that there is a plethora of schemes and various initiatives aimed to address the labor market outcomes of the youth, and the different schemes that exist relate to different stages of youth in the labor market, from entry at age 15 and exit at 34, 35. So government must realize that it cannot create all the jobs required to absorb the youth. Therefore, all it can do is to create an enabling environment, and from also the communities, us as the sectors of higher education, to also encourage our youth to create employment, start businesses, and rather stop looking for employment. So not everyone should be looking for employment, but they should also be thinking about what can they do to create employment. And schemes that are implemented almost independent of government, like YES, account more clearly for their operations, with a baseline and end-line reporting and more transparent recruitment. So the government programs can learn a lot from the YES program on the reporting, so that now it is better to account for what they've been doing. Entrepreneurship needs to be encouraged, as already mentioned, and the youth should go through professional training where necessary. And government must also play a role in the data collection and curation for better informed decision. This also influences the monitoring and evaluation of programs. And one that we also picked up is that it appears that there is no scheme which can clearly account for the activities in a disaggregated manner than the YES. Again, this is something that now all other programs can learn from this particular scheme. And the majority of schemes can only talk in broad terms of the impact, but the detailed information was missing, so therefore improved reporting is important. In terms of our recommendation is that there is a need for information sourcing and reporting of all schemes, and if now the reporting could be centralized, it is going to be much better. And for example, the Department of Labor could be now play the role of ensuring that all the programs are being providing the report of what they have done, and they could also create a database that they're going to maintain on a regular basis. And there is a need to reorganize some of the schemes guided by the ecosystem in which they participate. And implementation for schemes such as EPWP may need to be reviewed, also looking at their successes and then their shortfalls and what could be done to improve them. As already indicated, since monitoring and evaluation is a challenge, it needs to be now improved so that it's on an ongoing process, but not only at the end of the program, because at that stage they might have lost some of the important information. And the other important factor is to ensure that all teacher qualifications should have a full year work experience. That way we are sure that the youth will have some form of workplace skills when they leave the university. And the Department of Labor needs to track active steps in data collection, collation, and curation for use in decision making for monitoring and evaluation. As the policy HSRC was saying, we need to have a baseline. So that can be achieved if more tracking is available. In terms of the limitations of our research is that there is a paucity of documentation per each scheme implemented, because implementers could not recall all the details and could not account for activities of implementation. Also, lack of finite detail like overall budget, cost per beneficiary, outcome per beneficiary meant that the impact could not be quantified. There is a need to recall bias. Supplementers reflect more and more on recent events than the span of the scheme. So it's important to have now what happened from the beginning up to the end. And finally, a majority of schemes lack theory of change grounding. For example, there is a mix on creating job opportunities versus employment creations versus skills development. So this means that it is not possible to dictate any enough the possible successes of a scheme or to do a thorough impact assessment. And that's that from our side, as we believe that we can change the world. Thank you. Over to you, Tendai.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
To get the, okay. I was trying to get the mic to work with me. Thank you very much for the presentation. And I understand we have already used up all the time that we have.
I just want to afford you 3 to 5 minutes for those critical questions that you might have identified. And to apologize also upfront, we also lost the presenters from the HSRC, but I think Shirin is trying to connect
She's trying, I'm not sure she's here yet.
in order to take their questions. So we apologize for whatever is happening. Our planning didn't go the way that we wished. But let me hear the questions. Maybe Dr. Modiba will be able to handle them. And maybe in the meantime, Shirini will be managing to connect. Can I get help with the mics, colleagues? I noted Kulu in the meantime. Any other question, colleagues? And my brother behind Kulu. I noted 2 questions, colleagues. And this is not the end. If there were questions that you wrote down, you can email to us. We will facilitate that you get responses to those. You can go ahead, ma'am. I think that one is it.